Bonjour, bonjour. Today am going to take you on a little walk through a very special section of the Louvre that has been closed for quite some time since before COVID. Was just reopened this last summer, and it closes again on January 7th. This will be closed off to the public until 2027, 2028. So I wanted to come in here and share it with you, but it's specifically a set of rooms called the Summer Apartments of Anne of Austria. These are not them, but I wanted to start right here because this straight ahead is where the Venus de Milo is, and that is where her winter apartments were. And, you know, as one does, one has a summer apartment and a winter apartment, but we're not just talking about a apartment, it's a suite of endless rooms. And so Louis XIV in 1660 decided to work on these rooms and put it together with this beautiful rotunda here in the center. This rotunda used to be at one point also the entrance to, when the Louvre opened in 1793, the entrance was right behind this door or this sign here, but now it's just a window. You can't see from the outside that there was a door there. It's all been changed, but you could see in these great old photos that I also have some lithographs of what it looked a little bit more like. I love all the statues in there that aren't here now. And this is what the rooms look like under Napoleon. You have Napoleon there in the very center with Josephine. We're looking at some of the booty he took from around Italy. But I'm gonna go through here and show you all about the rooms and the ceiling specifically. Here's a great little map. And sadly, as I said, these rooms are going to be closed. I waited for so long for them to open, and now they're gonna close up again. But we'll start here on the ceiling. The ceiling here is pretty fantastic, but it actually dates a little bit later. It dates to 1825, because when Napoleon changed this into the part of the Louvre that was where antiquities were kept with the statues, like on the picture I showed you. They changed this because it was also the entrance, so that the paintings and everything on the ceiling were updated 1825. And on the ceiling here specifically, you have Prometheus. He is a waking man, animated by Minerva. She is there in the very center with the olive branch, and you see man below. And to the right of him is the figure of time. On the left-hand side, you have the three fates. And so the three fates were, they would actually do exactly what it says, fates. So they would decide what your fate would be. One would take out the thread, the other one would measure it, and the third one would cut it. That was what their job is. And you will see those also in the Rubens room with the Medici painting. Here on the right side, those allegories represent the arts. So you have a painting, sculpture, and architecture. And then as you look around, the medallions around the room, there's 4 medallions, and those represent the different sculpture. So on this one here, this represents Italy, because you have Moses that was done by Michelangelo. This side is France with Pierre Puget's Milo du Coton. And I love all of the figures that are on here, the allegories. I love also how they have this like 3-dimensional that comes down, like the actual pieces of the vines that intersect between everything all come down. This one represents Egypt. And then on this side we have Greece. But they used to have, I have lithographs as well, that up in the top they'd have busts and other decorations in here. And then in the center there you have the genies of the arts. Not the 3 graces, usually it's the 3 graces, but they just represent the arts in themselves. But we're gonna go dive into those rooms. But also there's the floor, and the floors in this part of the Louvre are amazing. I love them. And funny enough, there is really nothing written about the floors, nothing that I have found. And I have done extenuous research with the Louvre, and I have never been able to find anything about the floors. I only have found that the floors that were in here originally were laid in 1664 after all of the ceilings and everything were done. But the floors themselves, and down here in this suite of what used to be the winter apartments, every room is different and it's amazing. Same thing, the floors in here are pretty fantastic. But they don't have, I've never been able to find anything that talks about the floors or when they were laid. So I don't know the year of this. The floors that were here, a good friend of mine, he said that in the 90s they did a lot of work on some of the flooring. But we're gonna pop in here before it gets too many people. It's first thing in the morning. So I'm gonna take you in here to the very first room. That part of it goes back to the 17th century and part of it is the 19th century. And there's so many little goodies in here. So here we're in the first room. This was considered the Salon. Up in the center of the ceiling, which is gorgeous. It's land received from the emperors Hadrian and Justinian, the code of the Roman laws dedicated by nature, justice, and wisdom. So you have the two emperors there on the left, and they're handing their laws over. The allegory of the earth at the very at the lower part, she also bears the special crown that looks kind of like a fortress around a city, and so she is actually taking the laws from them. And below her is a cornucopia with fruits and vegetables, which is also about abundance. The imperial Rome is in the very center of that piece, which is easy to figure out. On the right side is the shield that is inscribed with Roma, where the two putis, which are the little cupids, look over it. At the top of it, you have Minerva, who's the goddess of war, with justice there. And she, in addition, down but on the left side is nature as well. But the ceiling is really fantastic. And let me just tell you, when it comes to these rooms, especially rooms like this, and just a lot of the rooms and ceilings in the Louvre in general, it's really difficult to find information. So I have been working since June on this, doing research in many, many different sources. A lot of it is also just because once you realize what some allegories look like or what they usually are holding, you could kind of put it together and figure it out. But it has been quite the labor of love. And I'll have even more detailed information on a podcast episode we're going to record here pretty soon. But straight up ahead there, you have what it looks is like a cameo. And these cameos were done by a gentleman named Victor Bionnery. And he also did the ones, you'll see his work in a few of the rooms, and you also saw his work in the apartment, Napoleon III, and these were done in the 19th century. So this is the allegory for French sculpture, and you see the little Petit there. He is inscribing on that plaque some names of the greatest French sculptors, Goujon, Pilon, Cousin, Puget, right there. She's actually holding on her lap the piece that was actually created by for Catherine de Medici for the heart of Henry II. And next to that, you have the F for France, Francois Premier, and then the N for Napoleon, of course. And then on the side, we also have some medallions. And these medallions are actually stucco, even though they look like they could be bronze or even wood. And the one on this side represents the Rhine. And then the one on this side represents the Iridan, which is a Greek. So then you have this medallion. There's 4 medallions in this room that represent the great rivers of Europe, and also again going back to different countries. So the one on this side is represents the Rhine going through Europe. And this one is a little easier to figure out because it's the Tiber, which is in Rome, it's easy to figure out because you have Romulus and Remus down there below. You have some other cameos up here at the top. And these cameos on this side, that means study. And this one represents science. And then we go over to the other side of the room. The walls, when these were her apartments, would have had paintings and everything on it, so there is a little bit different. But these are the only rooms of the Louvre that are actually still representative of what they originally were designed. They have not been changed. The king's apartments, we do still have those, but they completely took them apart and moved them to a different part of the Louvre. This one, on this side, you have the Nile in Egypt. And this one is Iridin, which is Greek. This represents Greek sculpture. So you could see the Acropolis there in Athena. And then this side we have Roman sculpture with the Arch of Titu. But I love all this. One thing I really love about this, and I'm going to zoom really close into here, the way that this is all painted. This is painting. This is not wallpaper. And they just restored all of this. That's why it was closed for so long. They restored the ceilings. I went to an amazing conference here at the Louvre where they showed before and afters. It was really interesting and fantastic. And the people that work on restoring these things are absolutely amazing. Since they've opened these rooms back in June, all I do is come in here and look up. I pretty much recognize and know all of the guards in here. And they always see me and have asked what I was doing. But I'm going to take you into this next room, because this room gave the idea to a whole entire other section of the Louvre. So the second room of her apartments is the Salle des Saisons. And this room inspired Charles Lebrun to do the entire upstairs. Right above us is the Galerie des Palais, which is where the crown jewels are, which is the crazy, over-the-top, everything is gold. It looks like this ceiling on steroids, because that is Apollo, and that represents the basic every single day that changes, because Apollo is the sun, so it rises and sets. And this ceiling inspired that one, which I will do a whole thing about the ceiling of the Apollo Gallery, because it's also an amazing one. So you have different up here on the ceiling in the corner. We could start in the corner, and this is spring. Spring is there, and it's a young woman awakening is what it is. The center is Diane is surprised in her bath by Acciton, and so he's fleeing, and she put a curse on him so that antlers would grow out, and you could see those at the top of his head coming out. Again, then you have all these amazing sculptures on either side. We have summer on this side. Up here, it is Apollo, and he challenges Marseillaise, who is in a music contest, and he loses, and Marseillaise is later tortured, which you also will see in other pieces here. And then on this side, we have fall, of course, which is usually always seen with grapevines. Up here is Apollo crowning the muses of Zeus. And then, of course, winter, which is usually always an old man, because it's also the seasons, also are the seasons of our life. And then this one is Diane attending to her chariot and the nymphs while looking at the sleeping Endormé. I'm sure I said that one wrong. But on the ceiling, you have Diane and Apollo. And Apollo and Diane were brothers and sisters. Apollo is the sun, Diane is the moon. And then on either side of that, again, we have these pieces that look like they're bronze or wood, and these represent time. So everything about this room, again, because it's the seasons, it's all about time. And this is where people would have to come and wait. So if they were going to see her visit the queen, they were going to have to wait here. So again, about time. So on this side, you have hourglass and also a clock. And on the other side, it is of the zodiac, which represents the year. Now, one of the other things I really, really love in these rooms are these 4 medallions. And these 4 medallions that you see also represent the 4 elements. So the first one here is Neptune and a seahorse, which is, of course, water. Then on this side, we have the Earth, which is Cybele. She's seated on a lion, so animal of the earth. Auguste. And then on this side, fire, because you have Vulcan, he's forging lightning. And then this side we have Juno, which is the air, and she has her peacock. But just look at, take in every single one of these details. I'm trying to soak this in as much as I can as well, because I'm not going to see these rooms for so long, and I waited so long for them to reopen. So I'm really doing this video as much for you as I am for me, so that I could just constantly look back on it. And I took about 4 billion photographs of this room as well. But isn't it just absolutely stunning? I mean, the details on every single thing in these rooms are just amazing. This room is known as the vestibule, and this is a really hard one to get because the lighting in here is really bright. But the ceiling, and I'll get this from the other side of the screen too, is Mars, Minerva, and Mercury. And this is a room they had to change a bunch because this room, you see the fleur-de-lis on here. During the Revolution, they actually passed a law that said any effigies of any sort that had belonged to the monarchy had to be removed. So she was actually holding a lily that had to be removed, but they didn't remove the crown. But you do see the fleur-de-lis back here again. This room also used to have a bunch of paintings in here dedicated to Marie de Medici, Henry IV. Those were later taken down, but the lighting in here is pretty harsh, so it's kind of hard to really get a good idea of the ceiling. I just had the cutest old fellow, adorable, I love him, asking me what I was doing. Just somebody had the loveliest little chat in French with him. But here, what I do love in this room, and it is so hard, these lights are so bad, I can't really get in there. I will put photos of what these specifically look like before we get to the next room, so watch for those here in a second. But on this side, you have Peace, who puts fire to a pile of weapons. This room really is about peace, and it was a time when the Pyrenees, the peace with the Pyrenees was being settled, which was also ended up having the exchange of the princesses. Everything happened with this at that time. And then the 2 figures, one on this side represents the Seine, and this on the other side is the Rhone, which is also Lyon, and that's why you have a little lion on there. So see, sometimes there's these great little clues that come up in some of this stuff, but let me tell you, not often. And this side, you have the goddess of agriculture, and then next to her is Neptune, and Neptune is also showing that it's the sea trade. And then on either side, you have the Loire on one side and the Garonne on the other side. Again, I'm going to put pictures of all of these right after I walk out of this room before we get to the next one, so you can really see a little bit better what they all look like. And you could also find the same painting on a tapestry that's here in the Louvre as well, which is pretty amazing. But this door goes out to the garden. Now it's just, it's been used, it was used during the Olympics as a big station for the police. And then before that, it was used when they were doing all the restoration work in here. They changed, they updated the mechanical, the heating, ducts, everything. And it used to be a beautiful garden long ago, and it really hasn't been for quite a long time. So hopefully in a couple years when they finally finish, that'll get fixed too. But I'm gonna show you those pictures right now, and then we'll go to the next room. So before I get into what this next room is, I will tell you a little bit about the artists. So there's two artists that pretty much did the most important, that did the most work in here. You have Francesco Romanelli. He was Italian. He was born in 1610. He lived until 1662. He was a student of Pierre de Corton. He had decorated, he's Italian, he had decorated the Galerie Mazarin that's in the Bibliothèque Nationale now. And if you go there and go to one of the special exhibits, you could see the ceilings. They're pretty amazing. A little hard to see because they're not really set up to be displayed per se. It's usually whatever is a exhibit going on at the time, but I do definitely recommend going and checking it out. He had a little bit like Viollet-le-Duc, who did everything in Notre Dame in the mid-19th century. Romanelli also worked with the sculptors to what exactly he wanted and how he wanted it to go. So a gentleman named Michel Anguier, he was a sculptor. He was the brother of Francois. He was studied in Rome, and he did a few other pieces that are here in the Louvre as well. He had worked on Vaux-le-Vicomte and Val de Grace, which Val de Grace is also very close to the heart of Anne of Austria, and I'll show you something about that on the ceiling of the next room. But they had done most of the work that you see in here, along with a few other people. Pietro Sasso, he also did some of the sculpture work on here. Ottavia Ottaviani did a lot of the gold gilding as well in all of these rooms. So some things, like when you see part of the next room was actually redone because it had changed, and I'll tell you all about that when we get in there. But this room, so this room is about Roman history, but also it's kind of about war. On the ceiling in the center of it, you have history showing time, the genius of immortality and fame, publishing the triumphs of Rome, crowned by the genius of glory. And you can see all that, the older gentleman at the bottom. The time is always an old man. In the center of it, you have Rome, and next to her in the blue and the pink, and I'll go to the other side so you can see even a little bit better, is history. And so she is usually seen with the tablet. The first painting on that east side, or the west side, is the abduction of the Sabines, which is something you see quite a bit in art. We also have the medallions here, just like the first room as well. The painting in the center here is Macias, who's putting his hand in the fire before the king of the Etruscans, which is pretty amazing. The colors on these are fantastic. The far medallion is, of course, Romulus and Remus. And then this side is a Roman sacrifice. Not so nice. And then when you look here on the north side, the north painting is the Senate deputies bringing the purple of Sistinus above the cornice here, right in the middle. And then on either side of that, you have the medallions of the innocence of the Vestal Tucia and the devotion of Curtis throwing himself into Chassa for the salvation of the Romans. But here's a little bit better view of the center of the ceiling. Gorgeous. Now I'm going to take you to the last room. second to last room, but the last of her apartment, and it's a goodie, and there's a lot of stuff in it. So we are now in the Grande Chambre. This is her bedroom. This was actually 2 rooms when she was here. So the ceiling, this is a room that you have ceilings at 17th century and also 19th century. Quite a few different artists, but the part that's the 17th century was all Anguier and Romanelli. And so this is where she'd wake up every day and she'd be able to look up at the ceiling and see all of these things that represent her amazing, fantastic virtues. In the very center, of course, we have her virtues of religion and theological values, as you do. But then you also have all these half moons that are on either side. And I'm going to show you the pieces on the north and south first. So on the south, because this piece on the south is the only piece of that south little section that is 17th century. And this is Esther and Assuerus. These are, again, other biblical figures that, were amazing, just like Anne of Austria. This side is Judith and Hola, where, she's just about to chop her husband's head off. I mentioned Val de Grace earlier. You can see here, this figure is holding a map of Val de Grace, and that map of Val de Grace is because that is what Anne of Austria built. Anne of Austria built a lot of churches. She wasn't getting pregnant. She had been married to Louis for 20 years before she ended up finally getting pregnant, and when she did finally get pregnant, her son was Louis XIV. But so she was building churches and monasteries and abbeys and everything, thinking that was going to get her a child, and in the end it actually kind of worked. I'm going to do a whole nother episode just about Anne herself, but this one is also charity. You see and throwing out the money there. You have some more of these little cameos. This side is profane history and the other side is sacred history. Over here on the west side. So the half circle is continence is frightened by love, which is the little cupid there. Defended by virtue with a lily in hand. Again, these are all her virtues. The ceilings, they also have these little small geniuses on top of it. This one on this side is glory. They're supposed to represent glory. The next circle is prudence and prevoyance. Prudence with the mirror is representing foresight. And above is justice. We'll head over here to this side. But again, look at these amazing floors, just gorgeous. This is usually where the huge Tiber fountain statue is, which is funny that they that replaced it with this one that's very similar to that. On the east side here, look at the center. So we have temperance and peace. And then on this side, we have justice and abundance. The circles above represent water, as well as time. So now at the end of the room, there is 5 pieces that were all done by 5 different artists. This was because in the 19th century, they decided, early 19th century, this was a whole separate room, so down there at the end, and it was the Salle de l'eau, so it was next to the water, because right outside the window is the Seine. And it was decided to take that out because, as you saw in a picture from the very beginning on the wall, this is where they had a huge statue at the end of the room. So it was this big vista you walked in and through. And so they decided, Lucien Bonaparte, brother of Napoleon, he decided that they needed to change that, and they wanted to choose different artists. So they specifically chose 5 different artists to do the 5 different pieces that they needed to. And we'll go down here a little closer so you could see. But they had to also pick artists at the time that would seamlessly kind of go into and match what you also already see here in the ceiling. So in the very center of it, we have a French Hercules, and it was done by Philippe Auguste Hannegan. And it's been restored, but the back colors are very faint. But you have Hercules there standing with his club, but also holding an olive branch. On this side of the room, you can see, look at those fantastic sculptures. The little sculpture group in between, on both sides, above me and across, those are both redone as well. Those are done by different artists. So those are done by Claude Dejoux, and so he did a pretty good job making them look a lot like the other ones on the other side. This side was done by Guillaume Lettier, who there's a special exhibit going on in the Louvre right now about him, which I didn't know a lot about him before. Pretty much I mostly knew his name from this piece here. The exhibit is fantastic, and I'll have to share something about that one as well. But this was Victory in the Geniuses of Arts and Drawing. And then above her is the 2 little geniuses study guides, and represent the development of engineering that was done by Pierre-Paul Prudhomme, which is a pretty big name in French art for that period of time. And then coming over to, I'm recording this on January 5th, I believe it is. Usually it gets quiet at this point because of holiday travelers, but it still was really busy this morning. It's really wet out too. This side is study, so it's the allegory of study sitting in a green tunic, and she's there teaching. You have 2 fighting roosters there on the side that kind of represents Gaelic, and then you also have triumph of glory and fame above. Just look at all the details. You also have some dolphins in the corner there that represent the Dauphin. So Louis XIII, after he died, and it was just Louis XIV and his mother, Anne of Austria, Louis XIV was very, very close with his mother. So he is the one who actually selected, working with the artists, the themes of everything that were going to be in the rooms and on the ceilings. Again, right where we're standing right here, it is 19th century, but he had worked on, specifically which allegories were used, the themes of everything, as well as Anne of Austria. She spent quite a bit of time here, but these rooms would later also become part of the Academy. So it was the Academy of Arts were located in these rooms, which is pretty fantastic to have the Academy of Arts here working underneath these ceilings. I mean, how inspiring could that be? So I'm going to take you to the last room. The last room is really amazing, and I'm sad it's the last room, but we're going to head there now. So of all the rooms, when these were closed forever, this was the one I really wanted to get back into, because the last time I had seen it had been so long, and in that time I had learned so much more about the Louvre, and especially this period, that I was dying to see this. And when you look back on your photos that I took, those first couple years I came to Paris and was able to see this room only a handful of times, the pictures that you could take on your iPhone now compared to what you took back then, pale in comparison. So this entire room was done in the 19th century under Napoleon III, which you'll be able to see because he, of course, put his face on the ceiling as well as his wife. But this is was known as the Salle des Empereurs, so the Salon of the Emperors. It's also been known as the Salle d'Auguste. It's had many names over time. It's had many different functions. It was not originally part of her apartments. Eventually it was kind of taken in. This area right behind me it's actually blocked off now because this is where also they're going to put, the reason why this area is closing for so long is they're putting in a new department, the Byzantine. So they've added a new department to the Louvre, Byzantine, and then also the Art of Christianity. And that's going to be going in here. So there's quite a bit of the space is completely just shut off. That's not a part of this exhibit right now. So I wish they could be working on those right now at the same time, but alas, they are not. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the ceiling because it's amazing. We'll get to the painting on the top in a bit. But you have the two different representation of emperors. So they loved to tie themselves to the great emperors of Europe, especially Rome. Here above the door, again by the same artist, Louve, you have, this represents the French Empire. So you have her sitting there. She's holding the orb with the cross on it. And you see just on the right side an eagle, of course, because of course we're going to have that with, this was done under Napoleon III. Behind the eagle is the Arc de Triomphe du Carrousel, which is just right outside the Louvre. And below that you can see the two crowns. So you have the crown of Napoleon III, and you also have the crown of Charlemagne. The crown of Charlemagne is, of course, here in the Louvre. We don't have the crown of Napoleon III. It was, we don't have that anymore. It's just completely disappeared. But we do have the crown of Empress Eugenie, which looks just like it, just smaller. And then you have the scepter of Charles V, which is also here in the Louvre. On either side of this, you have two allegories. She represents Napoleon, which you can see the Arc de Triomphe on one side, and then the other side is Charlemagne. The medallions on either side, the first two, there's 8 medallions. These are in reference to Charlemagne. So you have the coronation of Charlemagne there on the right, and then Charlemagne going into battle. So each one of them kind of has their emperor kind of in glory and then also in war. Now the ceiling, I'll show you the Napoleon ones here in a second, but the ceiling is amazing, and I could go into detail that would take us 3 hours here. But the ceiling is as the Assembly of the Gods. It's by Louis Mathieu, and it was done in 1868. And it is, of course, many of the gods, but you also have a few other figures here. On the left there, the woman in white with the blue around her, that is Empress Eugenie. Behind her is Fame and Justice. And then you have the different gods around here. You also have the seasons. You have spring, fall, and autumn here on the ceiling as well. You have Apollo with Marsyas, the gentleman in the lower with that amazing leopard. That is also the story you saw in the other room. This ceiling also kind of ties all of the stories in from the other rooms. But we also have Dante and Virgil up here. Dante's up there in the green towards the top with his arms open in the blue. And then you have Plato and Socrates as well. And then here on the far side, you have again Prometheus creating man up at the very top. You have Cupid and Fichet. You have Pandora and her box. So you have all of these different figures up here. It's really fantastic. I was really excited to be able to come in here and see this. So, and then at the end of the room, we have at the ceiling, we also have Eugenie, of course. So you can't forget Eugenie, the wife, and I have done a whole podcast about her. She's really fantastic. The end of it here, we have Roman Empire. Let me zoom in here for you. So you have the Roman Empire, and in the right hand, they hold victory. And on the left, a child embodies the Tiber River. Of course, we have Romulus and Remus, which is pretty much whenever you see Romulus and Remus, you're going to know it has to represent Rome. And then you have at the end here, you have Augustus on the right there and Caesar on the left. And the medallions up there are Augustus. So it's just their way. He just continued on what his uncle did by aligning himself with these greatest emperors ever. On this side, you have Caesar with the triumph of Caesar there in his chariot. And in this side, you have Caesar amid his troops. But I really love the Napoleon one because the Napoleon one also emulates the coronation of Napoleon painting, and also Napoleon in battle. But you have him, Napoleon, up here as well. And I love this one. So I really hope you enjoyed this little tour. Make sure you also, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, do that. And also I did a walkthrough of the apartments in Napoleon III with all the details in there, and I'll eventually get through every single one of these rooms that have these ceilings. There's 52 of the 408 rooms of the Louvre that are open to the public that have ceilings that are decorated with sculpture or painting or whatnot. And if you're coming to Paris, reach out to me to help plan your trip, give you a tour of Paris. All of the deeper side of Paris that most people don't see. So my tours are all about, it's not really the first timers visit to Paris unless you are a history nerd, but it is more about stopping and taking time and looking at everything and knowing the history behind it that makes it so much fun. And I love that. So thank you guys so much for following, and I'll be back every weekend with a different video here on YouTube. A lot of Notre Dame lately, but make sure to check it out, subscribe, follow me on Instagram, Claudine Blue Blanc Rouge, also Facebook, and sign up at claudinehemingway.com for my newsletter and more stories and information, and I'll see you soon.